Good morning, everybody. This is going to be a quickie, and I'll probably splice two of them together. But I need to go through this so I can continue to do some things today. I've completed all of the classes in the record class that's up here. You can see all of the fields that's for the inspection. One other thing that I've gotten in here in the inspection is a small file, which we'll set up into it also in class mode, but that's for the images, to be able to tie the images to each one of the pages. From a screen standpoint, show you what we have gotten to. You can see I've got an image of a camera on beside each one, and that's set up that if it is damaged, then the button automatically appears and allows them to take a picture of that, and we'll tie it directly to that. So that is everywhere as well. So all of these are set up now, and we're in good shape. Okay. So the thing about it is that we've basically all got this in memory. We could actually run this and put in data, but it wouldn't save anything. So we're not overly worried about that at the moment. Let's just continue on. But the thing that's going to make this whole thing come together is the RESTful side, where we're actually going to do the majority of the work, the saving of the data, the getting of the data to return back to the particular device, things like this. So let's kind of see how we do that. Right now, we've got a configuration of Android. Configurations are set up in WinDev to allow you some great flexibility, and the flexibility is only increased in version 24 and 25 due to the fact is that we can use WinDev for all three products, WebDev as well as Android and iOS and desktop, all three. It's a great little tool that way. So what we need to do is that the RESTful side is not a mobile product. It's not mobile, obviously. So we got to create a new configuration just for that. Okay. So I'm going to create a new configuration. What it's going to do is give me some choices, and I'm going to choose the SOAP REST service. I'm going to choose a REST service instead of SOAP. Basically, since REST came out, I haven't used SOAP at all. It's much easier to use the RESTful calls. So we're going to use that, and we're going to say, what do we want to add to this? Do we want to add the global procedures and things like that? I'm not going to add the global procedures. I'm not going to add the classes because we're not using those in the server side of this. There'll be other classes we do use, but these we do not. And then we're going to hit next, and we're done. Okay, so this is going to go through this, and we might as well close all of these because we're just not going to have. And see, now we got save REST service. Okay, and that becomes our REST services. Do we want to create one? No, not at this time because we don't have any to create. So we got REST services. We got global procedures. We're going to close all these windows because it just doesn't make any difference now that I'm in the other configuration. Okay, and we're back here. So now we're under web service. That's fine. I want that. The deal is that now we're going to tie in the actual files that we're going to use outside the mobile environment. But you can see we also got two mobile file items here. So how do we handle that? The smart thing to do is create a custom folder, and we're going to call this mobile. And we're going to move both of these into the mobile window. Now they're out of the way, we're good to go. Now, the rest of them that's going to be out here, you can put it in another folder if you want to, but the majority of the rest of them that's going to be out here, which is basically two files, are going to be working for the connection and getting the data, okay, for the RESTful side and the management. So we need to create a connection because we want to make sure we get that from where it's coming from. We got SQL Server. HF, whatever you're going to use, you got several different ones you use, including PostgreSQL. PostgreSQL is the one that I'm going to use for this project. The thing about it is that they use MS SQL at the project level, but at the moment they're in the midst of moving either into new hardware or to the cloud. Okay, so if they're going to move into the cloud and everything, I'm going to put it up on my cloud server, which is Postgres, just for the short time being to keep it from having a problem and just allow them to start using it while they're in the midst of this transfer, which makes my life easier, to be honest with you, and like this. But I had already created both tables, and I'll show you those, both tables in Postgres, which you can see all the inspections are here. There's all the inspections, and the inspection images file is here. And I also did the same thing in MS SQL, where I've got the inspection images here, and I've got the inspections here. Let me get, which has got all the files and everything for the inspections, as you can see. So what I can literally do, and I'm going to show you that that's possible, is I can actually switch either one on the fly out of a little configuration setup that I'm going to put in there. That way, later on, as they use it, or as they start to use it, and he says, okay, I'm ready to go to Azure, or, my database over here, we need to move that over there. All I have to do is move the data into the new tables and point the server application, the RESTful application, to utilize it instead. Not a problem. So let's kind of move forward from here. So we're going to do PostgreSQL. I'm going to put it in my server. Okay. And give it a user ID and password, and then we want the database. Okay, I think I got the password correct, but we'll find out. Database is TCI Inspections. Now, Postgres is case sensitive, so make sure that when you put in your database name and stuff that you've got that correct. Okay. Next again, and finish. And we're going to say no on this because I don't want the mobile files associated with it, but now I have this connection here. So when I create the actual tables, I can do that fairly easily. I'm not going to take you through the whole inspection part, creating those two tables, because if you've done it at all, you can do it. It's not a problem, but it's just right mouse click, create a new one, or import it. How do you figure this out between, you notice here, the mobile class is the way it is, and the RESTful? Because this is the kind of the key. This is the initialization of TCI inspection, and this is going to be there for both sides. PCSoft gives you a nice little functionality with that. Using the symbol there, I can say if configuration name Android application, then I can do this. Same thing here. If configuration name is web service, now what can I do? Well, now I can put my information here for the connection to the server. Default connection to the server. This allows me, basically, depending upon which one I work with, just by switching the configuration, will only compile in what's necessary. The other one that I will be using is if the configuration, let's see, we want configuration type equals, this should be a web, I believe, site. So if the configuration type is site, now we're going to do the web stuff. Okay? And granted, you'd have to copy in the dbcon for both of them because it won't pick up the web services if it's the site, and vice versa. But you have 3 different sections here, and that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have another configuration for a website. And the website is going to allow them to look up the instructions, get data, stuff like that. And the website is going to utilize, I'm going to back this up, we're actually not going to use the dbcon. We don't have to. What I'm going to do when we get to the web service side is we're going to use the same RESTful service, the web service part, and have it return us the data in JSON to look at. So what we should be able to do at that point in time is basically only have one access to the database, which is the web service, and display data in both the mobile as well as any website information as needed based upon REST. Okay? So this is going to be a moving from a simple to a somewhat advanced development environment. Why do you want to do that? Well, if you're a single programmer using your own websites and stuff like that, you probably don't need to. You can do direct access for the configuration for the website and the mobile or a website or a desktop. You can do either one of them, and it won't make a bit of difference. The reason why that I would do this is pretty simple. If I'm not the only developer, let's say I deal with the database information and connection to the database and the data, I would develop the web service. Somebody else may develop the Android application. Somebody else may do the website work, like if Pete does the website work. Okay? If Pete does the website work, I don't really need him to go through and try to build everything and get an import and all that other stuff for a site. I can give him this, tell him what REST calls to do, and basically have the classes set up already. Have the entire classes set up already to work with RESTful services. So this is going to get pretty slick here because the same class that we're going to build to do the inspection is going to allow the RESTful call in order to pull it to the website, as well as the web service direct call. You're going to see how to do both. So this is going to get pretty advanced, and it's going to give you an insight of really the flexibility that you can work with if you work in a team environment. Okay? Like I said, at this point in time, I need to go back to the inspection and get those 2 done and imported. As soon as they're done, I will come back and add another piece to this and go from there. So I'm going to take a break. We'll pause this whole thing until I get that finished, so you don't have to sit there and watch me do that. And make it easier on both of us to get it done, and then I'll come back and we'll start with the RESTful development at that point and move forward. Okay? All right, talk to you soon. Okay, we're back after doing some adjustments to the analysis. Here's the deal. If you notice, I've got a folder here for mobile, which holds the mobile files that we have up there, the one file data that we needed. The 2 other images are SQL Server or basically anything SQL. Now, I made everything lowercase on purpose because I'm going to switch between using MS SQL and Postgres for the 2 of them. And that's how it's going to work. That gives us the best fit for both, and allows us to use it on either one because MS SQL is not, well, it's not case sensitive, it's non-sensitive, so we can use that for whether we have it all caps or all lower or whichever way we want to do it, it'll still work fine. But as far as Postgres or MySQL, a lot of that, depending upon how you do MySQL, is case sensitive. So making everything lowercase makes it easier across the board. Now, once these 2 are done, obviously all we have to do is, we save it, let it generate. But we need to tell. Remember, we had set up the 2 different configurations, the Android application and the web service.
So when we come back to our project code, which we go to the P and right mouse click and hit element code from there, you'll remember I set up the configuration for an Android application or a web service is the two we have, and then I have a website for later on. I can do the connection, and I've set up the connection to go to my Postgres database that I have for TCI inspections. Set that up, we're good to go. Now, I checked to make sure that I got everything right by doing an open connection. And the other thing that we have to do is go ahead and do a change connection. And since this is, here's one of the tricks. If this is mobile, you cannot do an change connection doing it this way. But since it's not mobile, I can literally put in the folder I want and change it only. So let's go back to the analysis and show you how that's done. Okay, so I've got these two files here. I'm going to create a new folder. And this is going to be called SQL. I'm going to put both of these files in that folder. Now, what I've got here is these two SQL files. Close up the analysis. Let it generate, come back, and then when we do the H connection here, you notice there's an SQL here at the bottom. That's that directory. And then I can say dbcon. Now, what that done is it changes the connection to the SQL files only because they're in that directory to my link to the database out there on the cloud instead of whatever local one I've set up in the connections within the analysis. Usually what we do is the one in the analysis is a local file or a local test area, something like that, so you can do what you want to do with. This one here runs the show. Okay, you can always do an if test mode to go around it, do whatever you want to do, but you know, that's what it works. So once you've done that, import it and do everything in your analysis that you want to do for SQL files, you do have to do the change connection. Now, a lot of people do the double quote asterisk double quote. So that means all files gets change connection. Well, that doesn't work for HF files, especially not for the mobile files, so you don't want to do it. If you're using multiple connections, in other words, you've got a conversion program from, say, MS SQL to Postgres or vice versa, or HF to Postgres and vice versa, then what you can do is put the files in the two separate folders, do the change connection, one for each one of the connections that you put together, and you'll have it all set up without having to write a lot of code. Otherwise, you're going to be doing it by each individual name, and depending upon the number of them, that can be pretty tedious to get done. This is a neat way where they shortened it up, and it works wonderful that way. So what are we missing right now? Because we're in a web service, we're missing a few classes. So we're going to import our classes from the SCM, and what we have up there is we have a I am connected to the wrong SCM. We have the repository that we put together, okay? And that repository, okay, so that one's right, yeah. And that repository is set up to have basically our junk drawer. It has all the stuff that we use. So we're going to import from the SCM. We'll go here, we'll come down, and we're going to find the repository. And it should be in there. It is right there. And from here, we're going to get a few things we're going to need. We're going to need the equate class. We're going to need a WX Manager class. And we're going to need the error handling class. That's the minimum 3 that you're going to need. For some reason, I don't see the error handling class. Look, my deal is just off there, so I'll have to go get it from somewhere else. That's all right. I share these two
and the error class, because if I change it for whatever reason later down, then every application when I get it will show back up. Otherwise, import a new copy. That's all you need to do is import a copy. Okay. Okay, so I popped over and imported the error handling class from another place. So I've got our error handling class, I got the WX manager class and the equate class, and we got to take care of those. So right underneath here, EQU is equate class. We're going to say the WX manager class dot connections equals dbcon. That way it knows what connection to work with. That's the only two things I need to do at the moment. Everything else is going to be done inside of RESTful procedures, so we don't have to deal with that much. The only thing we need to do globally is set the connection to where it goes for the RESTful calls and make sure that WX Manager class is connected to it, and you got an equate class. That's it. Now, we have two database, or we have two tables here that we got to deal with in our deal. We got PG data and MS SQL is the two connections, and then if we look at the files, we got inspections and inspection images. I renamed, if you remember right, I called it mobile record up here. I renamed the inspections to match the one in SQL because that's what I called it there, because it's going to be used in both. So the smart thing to do is you can right mouse click on it, come down to configurations and click all. Otherwise, it won't be available for the web service. You see it's not checked, only the Android application, and I want to do both. So now it becomes available in both. This is the way that you can share the classes between projects. Same thing with this. If you notice, it comes up for both of them. Well, I'm going to turn it off for the Android because the only one that I want this hooked to is error handling, I'm sorry, right. The only one I want this hooked to is the web service classes, okay? And the reason behind that is because Android doesn't know what to do with it. It's a different system setup, and the translation over does not always fit the way we do things in Windows. So we do it this way, and that way we don't have anything to worry about. So the configuration is only for the web service and not the Android, and then we're gone. If you want to double check that you got them all three right, just click on the configuration here, let it switch, and you'll see that these three dimmed out, and the only two are the mobile and the inspections, and you're good to go, and I can go back to the web service and start that again. Okay? Off and running. The next thing that we need to have is a set of global procedures that we're going to use. Well, I'm sorry, let me back the truck up. We are going to need the global procedures to use for the RESTful, but we also need to create the management classes for the inspections and the inspection images. So I'm going to right mouse click on this one, and I'm going to generate a modal class. When I do, I don't need the mapping, so I hold down the command key, or the key that has the Windows emblem on it. And that gives me the ability to get rid of block check things, and I can get rid of the items that I don't need to have. Okay? And that takes care of all that. Get rid of this end, and the mapping's there. And that's all I need. Save that. And if you'll notice, it comes in as MINSP image. I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to rename that and just take the M off the front. Double check to make sure that the configuration is only for the one, and it is web service only, so we're good with that. And now we have both the record structures set up. We got the inspection record structure, and we got the inspection images record structure. So both of them are set up pretty good. Okay. The next step is we've got to create the management class for each. So we're going to right mouse click, create a class. When it comes up, it'll say configurations. This is how you can turn around. I want to do only the current configuration. Set that up that way. And I'm going to call this Inspection Manager.
So it's going to manage all the records from the inspection if I have to go search for them or send them back, you know, whatever they need, okay? So we got these two. We're going to go over to our code bricks. Now, as an FYI, if you do not have these code bricks or you do not have the repository or something like this, please email us. Go on our Facebook page, WinDev-US, and ask for them. Email sales@wexperts.com. That's WXPERTS.com. And I'll be glad to send them to you. They're free of charge. There's also a video on YouTube already about utilizing our common global SCM out there to download it. You may follow that video and just download it yourself, and you can do what you want to do with it. But you need these two things because it's just always going to be we're going to use these things often. I use them often. That's why they're built. And what a code snippet is, or code brick, code snippet, this changed the name, is it allows you to kind of set up a little bit of code to have it work on its own. Here's an example. I need to fill all these variables. You'll notice that I've got a kind of a funky looking indicator on both sides of the file name. That's an entry field. It allows me to type in the entry field that I'm looking for. Same thing with the definition. And you can write these things and tell it what it needs to do and then drag it out and drop it. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to drop it and see it. It's asking me for what file class. Well, that's going to be inspection. Okay, so I got that, and it's telling me I got an array of the records of inspections. Now, the next thing I do is I've got to connect it to the information within the WX Manager class, so it knows, or the WX Manager class knows, what it needs to have in order to run. So we do the file manager to that as well, and it's going to ask for it as well. Now, let's kind of go over this. We don't talk about this enough, but a lot of these code bricks and code snippets that we use throughout the program are pre-done based upon the way we program. Okay? There's certain things that's got to be there. You got to have the fields, but let's go over this. Our primary key field name for all of our files is ID. If you look in any of our files, you'll see it starts with ID, and that's what we use. That's the primary field name. So I can pre-fill that in the code snippet, and it'll work fine, and I don't have to type it twice. That's what the idea is. I don't have to. So the only thing that I have to let it know is what database file name that I'm working with. It's either HF or SQL. Doesn't really matter. You can use either one of them. I need to tell it which one it is. Okay, so you've got that. An alias, if you're knowing or have knowledge of SQL, then you know that you can actually change the alias. So it would be inspections as INSP, as example, in the select statement. The file class name, leave it alone, because if there's a system that if we try to use the third party, I've got that in there. And you need to leave that one to match the inspections, and that's the reason why it says that. So what happens is this DB file name is the same as this, and it gets set up. So if I want to change this to have a shorter version of the alias, all I have to do is put in SP like this. Now it'll put INSP. You got to remember that when you type in your SQL statement, or you're going to do a SQL statement, that it is always going to be of an alias of INSP for every field that's there. Your choice. It really doesn't matter. It will take it. Kind of depends on how you want to do things. So if you don't, just put the DB file name back there and you're fine. Okay? We do have child management and parent file name. Basically, you can have parent-child in the classes, which allows you to do entries in memory, and then it saves the parent and then saves all the children automatically. But that's not going to be used in this application. I just want to kind of explain what those two items are. If you don't want to use them, you don't have to. There's nothing there. Okay, so we got that one. The inspection manager is done. Okay.
And the next one we need is obviously the images. So I'm going to create another new class. I'll make sure it says web service there. And this is going to be INSP image manager. Go in there. We go back to our code snippets, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. Come up here, INSP image. And if I spelt it wrong, you can see it gives it an error. Take that off, and all of a sudden it's right. So, and we go down, and we're going to go into the constructor and do the same thing. INSP image. And we now have everything set up for the both of them. We're good to go. Okay. Now that we've got all of our classes built, the classes manage the data. That's what we've got it for. So what it does is it will receive the data that's coming in. It will then either add, change, or delete based upon the action coming in. And it takes less code, less deal. Can you use the hadd, hmodify? Absolutely. I mean, you can write it any way you want. We use classes because we're used to it. It's quicker for us. And once you're used to how it works, it becomes pretty easy to handle. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and create a set of procedures. New set of procedures. And I'm going to call it REST procedures. They're all going to be tied directly to the configuration of web service because the mobile certainly doesn't need it. And then we have them. Now, we know that we've got to do basically at least a couple of things. We're going to have a get in order to pull any inspections from prior systems to check for things. Excuse me. As well as the add, change, delete, and also to be able to show different pieces of this when we get to the website stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a procedure to do a get. Okay. Fetch inspections. I'm going to have it do an in where clause because there's going to be searches for this either by a date range, a function, something that is true or false. Who knows what it'll be, so I put that in there. In SQL, for all the guys that know SQL well, they will say, well, what about injection? Injection is where somebody will attempt to send a SQL statement to a database through code, and they'll put a semicolon in it so they can send a second SQL statement at the same time. Okay? What that does is it screws up, and you literally can have something that says select asterisk from customer, and the next line says delete from customer, which means it empties your complete customer database. The way to solve that problem is pretty easy. Okay? All I need to do is put where clause is string equals replace in where clause. I'm going to look for the semicolon, and I'm going to put an asterisk. Anything. It doesn't matter. You can put it blank if you want to, but anything that will cause the statement to fail. Okay? So if I put a few asterisks in the top, no SQL statement, well, I can actually do something else. Asterisk can be used. It's if I put, let's put a percent, no percent, that's used to. A couple of pound signs in there, then it will fail. The SQL statement will fail, and you're dead in the water from there. And so that way you don't get any injections that way. Okay, sorry I had a short interruption there. So we got the where clause, and so now what do we have to do? Well, we have to take a look at, go ahead and do the classes and instantiate them and set them up and do the selection. So hang on. Okay, so let's instantiate both classes. I'm going to do inspection. Let's see, yeah. Manager inspections is inspections manager. Okay, we're going to do a rec inspection is inspection. And I'm also going to do, now here's the key. You got images in both is what you got coming back here. Now you can separate the two and select them externally to each other, or you can join the two of them. Okay. What I'm going to do is join the two of them, because in the inspections or in the inspection image, you have two different types of members with this. You got the image itself that's there, you got the inspection item, inspection type, but there's also going to be a pass. So if they don't want to actually store the images inside the database, you would have a link to go get it. So we can join these two together. And the way you do that is we open up the inspection images, we basically copy all of these fields, and we put them in the inspections. What that does is that in a select statement, it'll fill it in with the values that you selected, okay? And actually, I want to do that, so let me show you how to do that. We're going to put that back. We'll call it image inspection type, because I want to be able to match them. Now I can select both tables together and make them work together and make a better file. Instead of doing two SQL statements, I do one. Things will come back a little faster. If you want to make it all equal, highlight them like that, hit Control-R, and that gives you that. Okay, so how do I do that? So let's go back here. I'm going to go ahead and take these fields because I'm going to need these fields. And I'm going to come back to the REST procedure. And what I'm going to do is manager inspections dot join field list. Okay, another little interruption. Join field list. What this does is set up the SQL statement to be able to add those additional fields. So we've got to put a comma first because it's going to be after whatever the other fields are. And all I do is add these fields in the list. And we're done. Now, in order to know where to get those fields from, we do the inner join statement. Now I like putting this in blocks instead. So we got inner join. Well, let's do it with 2 ends instead of 3. Image, our inspection image. On INSP image dot inspection ID equals the inspections ID. So now I'm going to get every one of the fields from that by doing this. And when we run this, we'll run it the first time. I'll show you the SQL statement. For those that know SQL, you'll see exactly what's happening here. But what we do is we literally set these things up. So that way what happens is that as we set them up, they allow us to separate the different sections of it needs to be the select part, the inner join, join field list, filter string, and the order by, so you can build a complex statement. You also can do a custom SQL statement if you're going to use a stored procedure or something else to retrieve your data. So the custom SQL is there. Well, I don't think we'll use one of those in this environment, but I want to mention that in case later on you say, I'm using it, what do you mean by the custom? We can walk you through it pretty quickly. All right, so we got the last thing to do is we got the filter. We want to know what the filtering is, and that becomes our where clause. Okay. Is there any order by? Yeah, let's do the order by ID, because what happens, especially when you're talking about Postgres, is it actually rearranges what comes back to you first, depending upon how much that you need or what things you've currently been looking at. So in order to get it filtered or in order to get it ordered, you need to put in the order by to do that. So we're going to do it ID for right now. You can also use the inspection date if you want to, things like that, and not the ID, but more than likely everything's gone in direct order and you're fine. Last thing you need to do is inspections, you do a fetch data. Okay? So here's one of the cool things about using global procedures. If I've got it set up right, I can actually put a stop right there and I can click the smaller go button and I can actually test this. Now, you see it comes in as it's got an in where clause. So all I'm going to do is put in where 1 equals 1, which give me everything. Okay? And I'm going to run the procedure test. It's going to come down here and it's going to stop here. Okay, so it's run through my project code and now it's stopped down here in my REST procedure, and I can say, let's go all the way down to here. So I'm going to continue down to this and I'm going to do a detailed step. Now you're in the WX Manager class. As you can see, I've got it set up to where we got the select, the alias, you know, all the different pieces in there, and this is using indirection to develop this. Makes it a tremendous amount easier if you don't have to do it. You know, people say, well, why don't you use queries instead? Depending upon the database, some items are more difficult to do in the query than it is just to write the statement. Second of all, I've been writing SQL statements since 1988, 1989. You know, it's second nature for me to do it. You can go either direction. If you're going to use the query deals, you can certainly can. So we step down here and you can see that what we want to do is look at the SQL statement. That's what we're going to look at. So if we evaluate that expression, what do we see? We see a valid SQL statement. Select inspections, asterisk, select the other fields, from inspections, as inspections, interjoin the image on images, inspection equals that, where 1 equals 1, and I forgot to put the order by on there. So it's got ID only. Well, that would obviously fail. So what that has to mean is okay, you done it wrong, and that was on purpose. You need to put the actual statement, order by. And that'll be correct. And what that will do now is pull back any inspections you have and send it. So how do we get it back to whatever is calling this? Okay. If you're doing a website, which is what we're going to do as a website, we want to go ahead and do this kind of selection. We can do it for the mobile too, because we're going to be showing images with it, and it'll all be in one, even though it's in two up there. So what we do is now is we got a return JSON is JSON equals manager inspections array rec. And then result ret JSON. When we get data, I'll show you how that works, or how it works. But basically, it creates the entire array of the returned variables inside the JSON. So when I send it back, I've got every one of them that I need with all the data I need, including the images. Everything's pretty smooth. Okay. This is, this is how we do that. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we need is obviously we need to do an add, change, or delete record. And that doesn't mean we have to do 3 procedures. We do 1 procedure. We call this one inspections, fetch inspections. So this is going to be ACD inspections. And we're going to send it one deal, which is an action. We're actually not going to send that at all. We're going to add it to the records, so that way, if it needs to do it multiple records, we certainly can. So we do this. Now, we're going to receive the actual record in a content. That's what it's going to be. So the record's going to come back to us as a JSON to us. So we're going to put in there is rec JSON is JSON. So that way we have something to put it in, and we're going to then try to get all the data from this and be able to allow it to work. So we need to add some more items to this. Hang on. Okay, in order to get that data, what we have to do is get it from the web service parameters. Okay, so we do an equal sign, and we do web service parameter. And what we want is the param buffer. Okay? So that should give us everything back as a statement in JSON. Now we got the full record in JSON if we want to, if we need to deal with it. Part of the record is going to be the action type. Simple as that. So what I can do now is declare, I'm going to do the rec inspection. Is inspections, manager inspections is inspections manager, and I'm going to do a rec. Yeah, we can do it up here. Rec JSON. Okay. That in itself will send in the actual everything that should match field by field to it. Now, unfortunately, it's case sensitive, so we need to make sure, and that's the reason, okay, because JSON is case sensitive. That's the reason why we use the same class variable for both the mobile as well as the REST. That way I don't have to do each individual field. Now, I will double check and make sure nothing happens wrong, but initially that should work fine. Now, the only thing that's missing is the action type. Okay, so that would be a rec inspection. I'm sorry. Yeah, back it in here. Action type is int equals rec JSON action type. Okay, so now I've got the action type to tell what we need to do. Since the inspection is there, the only thing I need to add, change, or delete this, let's be honest with you, is manager inspections dot save record, rec inspection ID, action type. I am done. That's all it takes. Okay. That's all it takes to do that. Oh, this should not be that. This should be just straight ID. I think something's wrong there. Okay. Now, the difference is that I actually want to send back the entire record back to the mobile device. Why? Because once you, let's say you do an insert, the ID that you just created for that inserted record needs to go back to update. So if action type equals EQU.insert, EADD, Then what I'm going to do is rec inspection .id. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Return JSON equals the rec inspection. Okay, that'll make sure the ID is there. Otherwise, all I'm going to do is result return JSON. Okay. You don't need to return a delete. Well, we're going to return it every time, so we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to return it every time. And if it's a delete, well, we won't worry about the return at that point. So I've reassigned it to the return JSON and result to the ret JSON. That way, every time it comes back as a in the content back to you as a full JSON record, and you can do what you want to do with it. We'll check for the delete or whatever it needs to be on the other side. And if it's delete, we'll ignore what the content is coming back. If it's anything else, we'll go ahead and update the record and restore it, so that way if there's anything that's being updated from this side, it can be done. Now, you've got the same thing having to deal with the inspections images, okay? ACD. Okay. And I'm basically going to copy exactly the same thing because there's just not a whole lot of difference in what I do. The only difference is what I declare. So instead of manager inspections, we set it up. And the same thing with the inspections. We set this as and change this to image. Okay, and we're done with both of them. It's pretty simple. If you are doing outside, in other words, you're doing something that's going to use cellular service or something like this, I would strongly suggest that you put in some code to have a user ID and password or a token or something like that that's valid for 24 hours. This is an internal company one, so it's going to be on their Wi-Fi only. It's not going to work outside the system. So I don't need to do that, even though I could. We'll get through this process, get everything done, and we'll see what we can do and go from there. Okay? Right now, I'm going to let y'all go. I got a few things. People are hollering at me to do a few things, so I need to get over there and get some results done. I will add this to the existing one I have and probably add some third level to it before you get it this weekend. Thanks a lot. Talk to you a little bit. Okay, back after a short break. We got one more fetch to do. Well, no, we fetched both of them together. We fetched the images and it together so we can handle that. So in the RESTful procedures, where are we at on this? Well, we have to do one more step. We can literally test them, but no data is going to come back. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and create the RESTful. We're going to publish it, get the thing up there, and then we can get over and manually test just using the window, sending data up there and seeing whether or not that it, saves the record, and we can try to figure out if anything goes wrong, what would be the problem. So the next step that we have to do is over in our project tree, we need to come down here and you'll see REST Web Services description. So we're going to go in there, and obviously we don't have anything, okay? And what I do is if I look at the REST procedures, click them down here, I can see what I've got going, inspections, images. So there's only 3 of them that we have to do. So I'm going to do a new, and I'm going to create an entry point, and this new one, hit next, and I'm going to associate a procedure, and I'm going to associate the fetch first. So I go down to my REST procedure, and fetch inspections is what I want to do. And I hit the next button, and that's going to be a get, so we're fine there. And we're going to, what's a resource? We click on that. That we want to name exactly the same, fetch inspections. Now there's a parameter, we know that, so I always click the fill automatically anyway. Now you know what the parameter's there and everybody will be happy, so you hit OK on that. Next, and response format in JSON, and you can put a description in there if you want. Anyway, we got our deal. Now we got 2 add, change, deletes. Okay, so what we're going to do is another new, create a new entry point, go back in there again, associate the procedure for, say, ACD inspections. Next, this is going to be a post. Okay, you cannot send a JSON in the content for a get. You can only send it in a post. So no matter how you want to do this, it's got to be a post. You could set it up to a put, delete, you know, things like that if you want to. But since we're sending the action with it to know what to do, there's no sense in doing anything but a post. So we hit the next again, where you redo the resource, change that name to match ACD inspections. We're going to fill automatically, which there is nothing, which is exactly what we want it to be. And we hit the OK button at that point. Hit the next. Response format in JSON. Request format in JSON. And we can finish that one. Okay. Last one to do is the ACD on the images. So we're going to do another new. Create an entry point. Next. We're going to do the inspection images. And we're going to do that as a post as well. And next, do the resource defined. That it's going to be ACD INSP images. Fill automatically, which there's nothing there. And hit okie dokie. And then we can finish. Okay, so now we got the 3. We're kind of done here. All right. Rest of it is publishing up there to the web, you know, the web server and things like that, which is standard. I need to check my credentials up there. I think I've got it straight, but let's try that right now. We're going to go in, generate. Okay, we're going to create the web service and finish. Let it process, deploy it on a system. So that is my sra.wexperts. And the account we're going to use is SRA. And test the parameters. Let's see if we got it right. All right. I do need to upgrade to the latest version up there, but we're fine. We'll go ahead and deploy to it because it should work just fine. Okay, so we got them valid. Hit the next button and let it process. Okay, TCI inspections, that's fine. And hit finish. And when this is done, it's going to give you a link. You can see you got 2 links. One's a description and one's a test. If you hit the test one, it will actually give you a set of links to be able to run stuff, like fetch inspections and things like this. My strong suggestion to you is to go ahead and click that and save the link for at least some time. And the reason why is because there's not a way that I've found yet, and if somebody has it, please let me know, but not a way to bring this back up without knowing the actual link to it. So if I save the link, then I can go in there and test anytime I want without having to republish. Okay? Just a thought. Once we're done, and we are now published and ready to go to actually do some serious testing on the application itself. Now, I've done 3 kind of short ones of these, so there'll be a little, transition between them. And this is because I need to work on it at least, a couple hours a day or something like that to clean everything up and get it ready to go for the customer, for my brother-in-law. And so if there's any jumps or breaks or something in there, I do apologize. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the notes or on Facebook as you go through it. Either one, we'll look at it, and if you need anything from me, I'll be glad to tell you. Our next phase of this inspection, TCI inspection, is going to be back to the mobile, where we're going to set this thing up, make sure I got all the RESTful calls correct. We're going to create an inspection and walk it through and actually send it to the sound and see whether or not everything comes out like it's supposed to. That's where we're going next. There'll be a new session. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining me. Appreciate it. We shall talk to you later.